Okay, I want everyone listening to just close their eyes for a second. Picture this scenario with me.
All right, I'm with you.
It's 3:45 in the morning. You're in a massive international city, place you've never been before. Your internal clock is, completely scrambled from jet lag.
Oh, man.
Your stomach is making that hollow, angry growling sound because you haven't eaten in 12 hours. And then this sudden cold panic just washes over you.
The 3:00 a.m. panic, I know it well. It's a special kind of dread.
Right. You've just realized you forgot to print your physical train tickets. And you're supposed to be on that train at 6 a.m. sharp.
Oh, no.
And just to pile it on, you remember you have to pay a parking fine from some rental car mishap before you leave the country. And you promised your partner you'd pick up a package that was delivered to a local locker. You're just standing there on a dark street corner.
That sounds like the absolute worst-case scenario for a traveler. It's a genuine nightmare.
It is.
I mean, in most major cities, let's say London, New York, maybe Paris, at 3:45 a.m., you are effectively stranded. The city is closed. The entire infrastructure has just gone to sleep.
There's nothing you can do.
Nothing. Your best case scenario is finding a 24-hour gas station selling what I like to call sad rotating hot dogs.
The ones that look like they've been spinning under that heat lamp since the Bush administration.
Exactly those. Wrinkled, a little bit gray, just spinning in silence. It's this desolate, incredibly stressful feeling. You feel completely unsupported by the environment around you.
But here's the twist in our story.
Yeah.
You are in Taiwan. Specifically, you're standing on a corner in Taipei.
Okay.
You walk out of your hotel, you turn that corner, and you see it. This glowing beacon of teal, orange, and red. You walk through the automatic doors,
Yeah.
and suddenly that entire laundry list of problems I just laid out.
Yeah.
Solved. All of them. Without ever leaving the air conditioning.
And that right there, that is the fundamental difference we're unpacking today. We aren't just talking about a shop where you buy a bag of chips or a soda.
Not even close.
We are talking about the circulatory system of an entire island. Today, we are doing a deep dive into what the source material calls the cult of extreme convenience in Taiwan.
It is genuinely mind-blowing. I think for a lot of our listeners, the idea of a convenience store, a CVS, it's just a place to grab a quick snack, maybe a pack of gum.
With hit stop.
Right.
Yeah.
But in Taiwan, it is a way of life. It's this neon-lit utopia.
It really is. The source material we're digging into today describes these stores not as retail outlets, but as the infrastructure of daily life.
That's a powerful phrase.
It is. The thesis here is that the convenience store in Taiwan has evolved far beyond simple commerce. It has become a social safety net, a logistical hub, a dining room, and even, in some ways, a government branch office.
And for this deep dive, we have a really specific mission. We aren't just going to list all the cool stuff you can buy, although don't worry, we will definitely talk about the food.
Oh, we have to talk about the food.
We want to explore a very dramatic claim made by the locals. And the claim is this. If these stores were to close, Taiwanese society would essentially collapse within 24 hours.
It sounds like pure hyperbole, doesn't it? Collapse within 24 hours. That sounds like the tagline for a disaster movie.
It really does.
But by the time we finish unpacking the layers, all the services these places provide, from what we're calling the olfactory signature all the way to gamified taxation, I think you might actually agree with that statement. We're going to look at what happens when a private corporation effectively becomes the state's most efficient arm.
So let's get into it. Let's start with that sensory experience. You mentioned the olfactory signature. That implies there's a specific, identifiable smell. And having been there, I know exactly what you mean.
There absolutely is. This is what we're calling the quick win for anyone visiting. If you walk into a 7-Eleven or a FamilyMart in Taiwan, the second those glass doors slide open, you are hit with a very distinct aroma.
And it's not floor cleaner.
No, it's not the smell of floor cleaner or stale coffee like you might get in the States. It's savory, it's a little bit herbal, and it is just everywhere.
It's a tea egg, isn't it? The chime.
Precisely. Now, for our listeners in the West, this might require a bit of a mental shift.
A huge shift.
Imagine you walked into a gas station in Ohio and saw a crock pot of dark, simmering eggs sitting there on the counter. Your first instinct might be to call the health department.
Or just run away immediately.
Right. But in Taiwan, this is the handshake of the culture. It is the olfactory logo of the convenience store. So what they are is hard-boiled eggs. But they do something very specific during the cooking process. They gently crack the shells. They spiderweb them, which allows the marinade to penetrate the white of the egg.
And that marinade isn't just salty water. We're talking about a serious culinary potion here. It smells. I mean, it smells comforting.
It's a very complex mixture. You have soy sauce, obviously, which gives it that dark color. But then you have tea leaves. Usually it's black tea or oolong star anise, cinnamon, and often Sichuan peppercorns. They simmer in this liquid for hours.
For days, sometimes.
Sometimes continuously for days as new eggs are added to the pot. So when you peel one, the egg white has this beautiful marbled sort of mosaic pattern on it where the soy sauce has seeped through all those tiny cracks.
It looks like a dinosaur egg or something out of a fantasy movie. It's beautiful. And the best part, the price. It's practically free.
It's about 10 to 13 NTD. In U.S. terms, that's roughly 35 to 40 cents.
Incredible.
It is the cheapest, healthiest protein shot you can possibly get. You see students eating them for breakfast, taxi drivers grabbing 2 for lunch, CEOs in suits eating them as a snack between meetings. It is the great equalizer. Everyone eats the tea egg.
It's funny because that smell, for me, it instantly triggers a memory of comfort. It's not a fast food smell like grease or frying oil.
Right.
It's a home cooking smell. It smells like someone's grandmother is cooking in a back room somewhere.
That's a great way to put it. It signals nourishment. And that brings us to the second key to the city, which is how you actually pay for that egg. Because if you are fumbling for coins in Taiwan, you are doing it wrong. You are slowing down the machine.
The Easy Card, or they call it the Yo-Yo Ka.
Yes, this is an IC card, an integrated circuit card using RFID technology. It's similar to the Suga in Japan or the Oyster card in London, but its ubiquity is on a whole other level.
You see it everywhere.
You buy it at the airport or any convenience store, you load money onto it, and it becomes your passport to the island. You use it for the subway, the bus, the U-bike rentals, and of course for paying for absolutely everything at the convenience store.
But here is where it gets really interesting and really fun. It's not just a boring rectangular piece of plastic. The source material highlights the souvenir aspect of these cards. I have seen some truly wild designs.
This is where Taiwanese creativity and marketing genius really shines. They realize that this card is something you carry with you everywhere. It's a personal accessory.
Right, it's in your pocket all day.
So they started releasing the RFID chip inside special shapes and designs. You can get an easy card that's shaped like a Sailor Moon wand, or a miniature bottle of Kikkoman soy sauce, or a poker chip.
I saw one in the notes that is a miniature 3D model of a PlayStation 4 controller. It has little buttons and everything, and it actually works as a payment card.
It works perfectly. You just tap the little controller on the sensor beep and you've paid for your tea egg. There was even one shaped like a tiny tea egg itself. It's brilliant because it transforms a mundane financial tool into a collectible item.
And for a foreigner.
For a foreigner, it makes you feel like a local immediately because you aren't struggling with currency you don't understand. You're just tapping and going.
It gamifies the act of paying. It makes spending money fun, which is, a little dangerous, but totally delightful.
It is.
So we have the smell and we have the payment method. Now, let's talk about the sheer scale of this phenomenon. I think it's really hard to visualize just how dense these stores are unless you've actually been there.
The statistics are, frankly, staggering. Taiwan has the second highest density of convenience stores in the world, just slightly behind South Korea. But a lot of analysts argue that if you look at revenue and services per square meter, Taiwan is number one.
Really?
Hands down, we are talking about over 13,000 stores for a population of just 23 million people.
To put that in perspective for our listeners, let's use the Starbucks analogy from our notes. Because here in the U.S., we joke that there's a Starbucks on every corner.
Right, that's the cliche. Okay, so imagine you're standing on a busy street in the U.S. You see a Starbucks. Now imagine there is another Starbucks directly across the street from it.
Okay.
And then imagine there is a third Starbucks right next door to the first one. That is the kind of density we are talking about with 7-Elevens and FamilyMarts in Taipei.
There's a mention of a specific intersection in Taipei. I think it's near the main station, where you can stand on one corner and see 5 different stores without even turning your head.
That's a real place.
That just sounds overwhelming. Do they cannibalize each other's business? How does that even work?
You would think so, right? I mean, conventional business logic says that is insane market saturation, but they don't seem to cannibalize each other because the demand is that high. They aren't just stores. They are, for many people, their pantries. They are their living rooms.
So people use them multiple times a day.
Multiple times. You might stop at one for coffee in the morning, a different one for lunch, and a third one to pay a bill on your way home in the evening. Each one serves a slightly different purpose in your daily routine.
And it's not just one company running the whole show. There's this massive, epic rivalry going on. It's like the Coke versus Pepsi of Taiwan.
It's the convenience store wars.
Yeah.
And you have the two main players, the behemoth and the challenger.
The behemoth is 7-Eleven. In Taiwan, it's owned by a massive conglomerate called Uni-President Enterprises.
Yeah.
They are the dominant force.
Correct. And they have a mascot that is, well, it's a cultural icon in its own right. Open-chan.
Please, for the love of everything, describe Open-chan for the listener who has never had the pleasure of meeting him.
Okay, so Open-chan is a dog, but he's from outer space. Specifically, he is from the open planet.
Of course he is.
He wears this rainbow-colored headdress that's shaped like a crown, and it represents the colors of the 7-Eleven logo: orange, red, green. He has an entire backstory. He has a group of friends. He has music videos. He even has his own flagship store in the city of Kaohsiung. He is everywhere.
It's so wholesome and yet so intensely corporate at the same time. It's fascinating. And then you have the challenger, FamilyMart.
Right. FamilyMart is often seen as the slightly cooler, more hipster alternative. They've really leaned into being the innovator, trying to capture the younger crowd, and they have fought back against 7-Eleven's dominance by winning one very specific, very important battlefield: the ice cream war.
The Fami-Cone. I keep hearing about this.
It's their soft-serve ice cream. But we're not just talking about vanilla or chocolate. FamilyMart rotates these wild, seasonal flavors that create a huge buzz on social media.
Like what?
They've done a cactus flavor using actual cactus from the Penghu Islands, which gives it this brilliant, bright purple color. They've done a Tiguanyan tea flavor, which is a famous oolong.
And the one that stood out to me in the research, and frankly it scares me a little bit, corn soup flavor.
Ah, the legendary corn soup flavor. It sounds bizarre to the Western palate,
Yeah.
but it was a massive, massive hit.
I just can't wrap my head around it.
Well, you have to understand, creamy corn soup is a staple comfort food in Taiwan. It's very common. So FamilyMart created a soft serve that is savory, it's salty, and it's sweet, all at the same time. It tastes exactly like the soup, but frozen. It's confusingly delicious.
It sounds like a culinary dare, but I guess that's the point, right? It gets people in the door, it creates buzz.
Exactly. The strategy is come for the weird corn ice cream, stay to buy a bento box, and pay your water bill. This rivalry is what drives innovation. They are constantly trying to outdo each other with better food, better services, and cooler branding, which leads us perfectly into the concept of the third place.
Right, this is Ray Oldenburg's concept. The first place is home, the second place is work, the third place is where community happens. Usually we think of that as, coffee shops or libraries or pubs.
In Taiwan, the CVS is the third place. These are not grab-and-go spots where you feel this pressure to get in and out in 30 seconds. They have massive seating areas,
And they're clean.
incredibly clean tables, restrooms that are actually usable, which is a huge deal, and free, reliable Wi-Fi.
The sources mention seeing students doing homework there for hours on end.
Yes, and not just students. You see business meetings happening. I've seen insurance agents going over complex policies with clients at a 7-Eleven table. You see couples on late-night dates. There's an anecdote in the notes about a couple sharing a microwave gratin at 11 p.m. It's a socially acceptable place to just be. You don't get kicked out for loitering.
And keeping this whole incredibly complex ecosystem running is the staff. We absolutely need to talk about the Taiwanese convenience store clerk, because I feel like the word clerk is a completely insufficient job title.
Clerk is a massive understatement. The source material refers to them as overqualified logisticians, and I think that's dead-on accurate. Just think about the sheer amount of multitasking they have to do at any given moment.
It's multitasking on steroids. It's like watching an air traffic controller.
It really is. They are making a latte with one hand, steaming the milk properly, not just pushing a button while scanning a bill payment with the other, all while keeping an eye on the hot dog roller, printing concert tickets for a customer at the kiosk, accepting a package for delivery from a courier, and listening for the big delivery truck that's about to arrive.
And all of that while shouting, "Guanying Guanglin," which means welcome to every single person who walks through the door.
Without missing a beat. There's a common myth, I think, that convenience store work is unskilled labor. In Taiwan, that is objectively false. The cognitive load of managing all these different systems and machines is incredibly high.
I saw a meme that was mentioned in our research.
The job application meme.
Yes. It was a mock job application for 7-Eleven, and the requirements were something like a PhD in engineering, a culinary degree from a top institute, hostage negotiation skills, and the patience of a Buddhist monk.
And it was a joke, obviously, but it resonated with everyone because it felt true. They are the operating system administrators for the entire neighborhood.
Let's pivot to the food itself, because we've only scratched the surface. We talked about the tea egg and the ice cream, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. There is a stereotype, especially in the West, that gas station food or convenience store food is, well, it's garbage. It's the food of desperation.
We have to debunk that myth immediately. In Taiwan, the food quality is so high that people will actively choose to eat it over a restaurant for their regular meals. We're not talking about week-old sandwiches wrapped in plastic.
The collaborations are what really surprised me. A 7-Eleven partnering with a high-end 5-star hotel.
Yes, they have ongoing partnerships with places like the Regent Taipei, a luxury hotel, to create branded beef noodle soup bowls. They work with Michelin-recognized restaurants to develop pasta dishes. The whole idea is that you can get a gourmet-level meal, heat it up in seconds, and eat it for maybe $3 or $4.
Which is just incredible, and the logistics behind keeping all of that fresh are insane. Tell me about the 18-hour rule.
This is crucial to the whole system. The supply chain is so ruthlessly efficient that fresh food is delivered to each store multiple times a day. For their rice balls, their onigiri, if one of those sits on the shelf for more than 18 hours, the internal computer system flags it.
So what happens?
When the clerk tries to scan it at the register, the system physically won't let the sale go through. It's locked out. It beeps with an error. So you are almost never eating something that has been sitting there for more than a day. The quality control is intense.
There's a specific visual mentioned in the notes that I just love. It's the blue mesh bag.
Ah, yes, the iconic blue mesh bag. This is such a core part of the experience. You go in, you buy a bento box or a bowl of noodles. The clerk asks if you want it heated. You say yes. They pop it into these industrial-grade microwaves that are, frankly, terrifyingly powerful. They heat a frozen meal in like 12 seconds flat.
It's basically a nuclear fusion reactor behind the counter.
Practically. And then, because the bowl is now screaming hot, they deftly slide it into this little reusable blue mesh carrier. It's this net that holds your food so you can carry it without burning your fingers. And walking down the street, swinging that little blue net, that is a quintessential Taiwanese experience.
What does it signify?
It says, I have been fed, I am taken care of.
Okay, so we've covered the sensory experience, the scale, and the food. But the real thesis here, the reason we call it the infrastructure of daily life, lies in the services. This is where the Living in 7-Eleven title really comes from.
This is the user manual section of our deep dive. If you just go in and buy food, you are only using about 10% of the store's total capability. The real power lies in the kiosk.
The Ibon in 7-Eleven, or the Fami-Port in FamilyMart. Describe what this thing is.
It looks like a standard ATM or maybe one of those information kiosks you see in a mall, but it is effectively a portal to the entire Taiwanese administrative state.
So let's run through what you can actually do on this machine. Break it down for us.
Okay, number one, transportation. You can book your high-speed rail HSR tickets, regular train tickets, and all the intercity bus tickets. You don't need to navigate a confusing website on your phone, which can be a nightmare.
Especially for a tourist.
Especially for a tourist. You just tap the screen, select your seat, and it prints out this little white slip. You take that slip to the counter, pay with cash or your Easy card, and they hand you the real ticket. It's foolproof.
That is so much easier. I can't tell you how many times I've struggled with a foreign train website that won't accept my credit card.
Right. It solves that problem completely. Okay, number two, entertainment. This is the fastest and most reliable way to get concert tickets. When a massive K-pop star or a big Western artist announces a show in Taipei, you will see lines of teenagers camping out in front of the Ibon machine at midnight.
Wait, why the machine? Why not just buy it online on their phones?
Because the machine connects directly to the ticketing server through a secure, dedicated intranet line. It's often faster and more stable than the public website, which is likely to crash under the heavy traffic of thousands of fans trying to log on at once. It's the front line of fandom.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
A physical solution to a digital bottleneck. What else?
Number three, administrative duties. And this is the big one. This is what really underpins the whole societal collapse theory. You can pay your water bill, your electricity bill, your credit card bill, your phone bill, even your parking fines.
So you don't have to mail a check.
Yeah.
You don't have to log into 5 different terribly designed utility websites.
Nope. The convenience store is your bank branch and your post office all rolled into one. You just bring the bill to the store, they scan the barcode, you pay. Done. Stamped. Finished.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of post offices, that brings us to number 4.
Yeah.
The killer app, luggage shipping.
This one, to me, is the most mind-blowing service of all.
Explain the logistics here. How does this even work?
Okay, let's say you are in Taipei and you are planning a trip down south to Sun Moon Lake for a few days. You have a massive suitcase, but you don't want to drag it on the high-speed rail and then onto a local bus.
Which is an absolute nightmare, the worst part of travel.
The worst.
Oh, yes.
So instead, you walk into the 7-Eleven next to your hotel in Taipei. You tell the clerk you want to ship your bag. You fill out a weighbill on the kiosk. You designate a specific 7-Eleven near your hotel in Sun Moon Lake as the destination. You pay a few dollars.
And then it just
Yeah.
goes out.
It just goes. It enters their vast logistics network, gets on a truck, and arrives usually within 24 hours. You travel light with just a small backpack. When you get to Sun Moon Lake, you check into your hotel, you walk to the designated store, show your ID, and there is your suitcase waiting for you behind the counter.
That is a complete game changer. That fundamentally alters how you can travel around a country. I would use that constantly.
It eliminates the single biggest pain point of travel, dragging heavy bags around.
Unbelievable. Okay, finally, we have to mention gamified taxation. This isn't a kiosk feature, but it's a critical service feature. The receipt lottery.
This is such a unique and brilliant cultural quirk.
Tell us why receipts are so important in Taiwan.
In most countries, you get a receipt, you maybe glance at it, you crumple it up and throw it away. In Taiwan, if you throw away a receipt, people will look at you like you just threw a $5 bill in the trash.
Because you might have. It's a literal lottery ticket.
Yes. The government introduced this system decades ago to combat tax evasion. They wanted to ensure that businesses were reporting all their sales and not just taking cash under the table. So they incentivized customers to demand a receipt by turning every single receipt into a lottery entry.
And the prizes aren't trivial. We're not talking about a free coffee.
Not at all. The grand prize can be 10 million NTD, that's over $300,000 USD. But there are also millions of smaller prizes, ranging from 200 NTD, which is about $7, up to thousands of dollars. So people keep these huge stacks of receipts. Every 2 months, the Ministry of Finance announces the winning numbers, and the whole country checks their stash.
And there are apps for this now, I assume.
Of course, there are tons of apps. You just scan the QR code that's now on every receipt, and the app will instantly tell you if you've won. And the best part is, if you win one of the smaller prizes, you can just take the winning receipt back to any 7-Eleven and use it as store credit. You essentially buy your next round of snacks with your old receipts.
It's absolutely brilliant. It turns a boring, bureaucratic necessity into a national pastime. It's a game.
It creates a culture where every single citizen is an auditor for the tax bureau without even thinking about it.
Okay, so we have established that these stores are incredible, they are convenient, they are tasty, they are helpful, but now I want to get to the absolute core of our deep dive discussion. This is the part where we really need to stretch our imagination and analyze the deeper implications of this whole system. We mentioned that dramatic claim at the top.
That society would collapse within 24 hours.
Exactly. I want to take that claim seriously. Let's really explore this hypothetical. What happens on the day the 7-Eleven stood still?
It sounds like a horror movie title.
It really does.
For Taiwan, it basically is. Let's imagine a scenario, maybe a massive cyber attack on the internal networks of Unipresident and FamilyMart, or a completely unprecedented nationwide strike of convenience store workers. The stores go dark, the automatic doors are locked, the neon lights turn off. What actually happened?
Where do you even begin?
I think we can break this down into 4 distinct cascading phases of collapse: nutritional, administrative, logistical, and finally, social.
Okay, let's start with the most basic human need, the nutritional collapse.
Right. It's 7:00 a.m. on our hypothetical day 0. Millions of people, office workers, students, construction workers, are heading out the door. And their first stop, their daily ritual, is the CVS for breakfast. A tea egg, a rice ball, a coffee.
And now the doors are locked. The lights are off.
Exactly. So where does all that demand go? It floods the traditional breakfast shops, the little May burger joints and the soy milk stalls. Now, these are wonderful mom-and-pop operations. They're efficient, but they are not built for that volume. Suddenly, you have lines stretching around the block. Chaos.
So you have a massive calorie deficit across the population. Immediately, people are starting their workday hungry and angry.
Hangry. An entire nation of hangry people. Productivity takes an immediate nosedive before 9:00 a.m., but it gets so much worse at lunchtime. Taiwan has a very low rate of meal prepping compared to the West because buying a delicious, affordable bento box is so cheap and easy.
There's no need to.
There's no need. If all the CVS bento boxes and noodle bowls are suddenly gone, the restaurants get completely swamped. You're looking at 2-hour waits just to get lunch. The entire rhythm of the workday is fundamentally disrupted.
That's just the food. Now let's talk about the administrative collapse. This is the one that really fascinates me. We said the CVS is the portal to the state. What happens when that portal closes?
This is what I call the centralization versus fragmentation problem. Over the last 20 years, the Taiwanese government and all the major utility companies have systematically offloaded their customer service interface to the convenience store. They closed down local payment offices because, hey, why do we need them? Everyone goes to 7-Eleven anyway.
So if the Aban kiosk is down,
The entire burden of bureaucracy fragments and snaps back to its original, inefficient sources. Let's say today is the due date for your water bill and that parking fine we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
You can't go to the store, so where do you go?
I have no idea.
For the water bill, you'd have to find the regional office of the Taiwan Water Corporation. For the parking fine, you might need to go to a specific DMV office or maybe a police station. These are places you probably haven't been to in a decade.
And those offices are probably only open from 9 to 5 Monday to Friday with a long lunch break in the middle.
Exactly. And they have maybe 3 clerks working the counter who are used to a slow trickle of people. Suddenly, you have thousands of panicked citizens descending on these obscure government offices that haven't seen a real crowd in years. The queues would be apocalyptic. The entire civil bureaucracy would grind to a complete halt.
It's really interesting because it reveals a hidden vulnerability. We think of efficiency as a good thing, and it is, but it usually means removing redundancy. By making the CVS the one way to do everything, they've accidentally removed all the backup systems.
Precisely. That is the double-edged sword of optimization. When you optimize a system for maximum convenience, you often sacrifice resilience. The system is incredibly fast and smooth when it works, but it becomes brittle. It has a single point of failure.
Okay, that's chilling.
Yeah.
So, phase 3, the logistical collapse. We talked about shipping luggage and packages.
This would be huge for e-commerce. Taiwan has a massive e-commerce culture. Platforms like Shopee, Fami-Cone, Momo are gigantic. But because so many people live in apartments without doormen or secure places to leave packages, the default option is to have everything delivered to the local convenience store for pickup.
The store-to-store shipping model.
Yes. So if the stores close, you have millions of packages suddenly stuck in limbo. The logistics trucks are driving around with nowhere to drop them off. The central warehouses would fill up within hours. The entire e-commerce supply chain of the island would freeze solid.
So you can't get your new phone case? Sure, that's an inconvenience.
But you also might not get your prescription contact lenses or your baby's formula or essential medication that was being shipped via that same network. And the luggage. My suitcase is now locked inside a dark 7-Eleven in Sun Moon Lake while I'm trying to catch a flight at the airport in Taipei.
You're just stuck.
Exactly. The physical mobility of the population is hindered. You are literally weighed down by your own possessions again.
All right, phase 4. This one is less tangible, but maybe more profound. The social and psychological collapse. We talked about the store being a lighthouse in the dark.
This is what I call the safe harbor theory. Imagine the city at night. Taipei is a very safe city, but part of that feeling of safety comes from the fact that every 100 meters there is a brightly lit, glass-walled box with a person inside and cameras rolling 247.
It's constant surveillance, but in a strange way, it's a benevolent surveillance. It's what Jane Jacobs called eyes on the street.
Exactly. The CVS provides those eyes. If you are a woman walking home alone at 2 a.m., the street is lit by the glow of the 7-Eleven. If you feel unsafe, you can duck inside. If you need help, you go there. It's a sanctuary.
So if those lights go out,
The city becomes significantly darker. I mean, that literally the lumen count on the sidewalk drops. And that psychological safety net just vanishes. The city feels wilder, more abandoned, more dangerous. And for all the night shift workers, the taxi drivers, the police officers on patrol, the sanitation workers, they lose their rest stop, they lose their bathroom, they lose their source of hot coffee.
and the third place is gone. The students have nowhere to study. The elderly men who play chess on the tables outside the store are displaced.
The convenience store cocktail hour is canceled. This is a real social ritual in Taiwan. It's the poor man's pub. You grab a cheap beer from the cooler, you sit on the plastic chairs outside, and you chat with friends. It's democratic, it's accessible. Without it, you force that social interaction into more expensive venues, bars, clubs, which immediately excludes a huge chunk of the population. The social fabric tightens and frays.
So when we really unpack that question, what if these services didn't exist?
Hmm.
The answer isn't just, oh, it would be really annoying. The answer is systemic shock.
It would be a catastrophe of logistics, a crisis of hunger, and a deep depression of social morale. I'm not exaggerating when I say the government would likely have to declare a state of emergency to mobilize the army just to distribute food and figure out how to handle bill payments.
That is just wild to think about, that a private company or a couple of private companies hold that much societal power.
It really raises that provocative question. Is this the ultimate evolution of urban living? Is this what peak efficiency looks like? We have, for all intents and purposes, privatized the public infrastructure.
It's a fascinating trade-off. You get this extreme convenience and efficiency. You get a city that runs like a Swiss watch, or maybe a Taiwanese semiconductor factory. But the cost is that you are now entirely dependent on these commercial entities for basic survival.
Think about it. If Unipresident, the company that owns 7-Eleven, decided tomorrow to stop collecting water bills just because it wasn't profitable enough, the Taiwan Water Corporation would be thrown into absolute chaos.
If they raise the price of the tea egg from 35 cents to $5, there would be riots in the street.
There would. The government almost can't afford to let them fail. They are too big to fail, not in a financial banking sense, but in a fundamental societal sense.
They are the operating system of the island.
That's the perfect analogy.
Mm.
They're the OS. And you don't realize how much you rely on your operating system until it crashes and you're just staring at a blue screen of death.
This whole discussion really recontextualizes the entire experience. It makes me respect the sheer complexity of what looks, on the surface, like a simple shop. It's not just shelves of snacks, it's a finely tuned engine keeping an entire society running.
Absolutely. And it explains why the Taiwanese are so fiercely loyal to their specific stores. You are either a 7-Eleven person or a FamilyMart person, and you have deeply held opinions on why your choice is superior. It's like a sports team.
As we start to wrap up this deep dive, I want to circle back to the emotional connection. We've hit the listeners with facts, logistics, and these pretty scary doomsday scenarios, but the source material ends on a really poignant note that I think captures the heart of this entire phenomenon.
He talks about the concept of belonging, doesn't it?
Yeah. It says, and I'm quoting here, "The feeling of standing in an aisle surrounded by unreadable packaging, smelling tea eggs, and realizing I could live here."
That is the magic of it, right there. When you travel, especially to a culture with a different language and a different alphabet, you often feel like an outsider looking in. You feel like a ghost passing through the city. You can't participate.
You're just an observer. How does the convenience store change that dynamic?
It gives you the tools to function. It gives you the easy card, so you can move around like a local. It gives you delicious, affordable food. It handles your trash. It prints your tickets. It ships your luggage. It empowers you. Suddenly, you aren't just observing the city. You are an active participant in it.
It sends a message. It tells you that the city is designed to take care of you.
And that is a very powerful, very comforting feeling in a foreign place. It's not just about buying things. It's about feeling supported by your environment. In a world that can often feel lonely and confusing, the ding-dong of that automatic door is a sound of welcome. It says, "Come in, we've got you."
So for our listeners, if you ever find yourself in Taipei, don't just walk past the 7-Eleven on your way to a famous temple or a night market. Go inside.
Treat it as a destination in itself. Buy a tea egg. Get a cool-looking easy card. Sit down in the seating area with a corn soup ice cream and just watch the world go by. Watch the students, the workers, the grandmas. That is the real Taiwan, right there.
And we should leave everyone with one final thought to chew on. We talked about gamified taxation and recycling. Oh, we didn't even properly mention the recycling.
Oh, very briefly, you can bring old batteries, CDs, and even plastic bottles to the counter, and they give you store credit for them. It's another way they integrate civic duty directly into the retail experience. You are literally paid to be a good citizen.
Just amazing. So here is the final provocative question for you to mull over. We live in a world where we are increasingly suspicious of large corporations. We worry about their power, their data collection, their monopolies. But in Taiwan, the corporation has effectively become the state's most efficient and beloved arm. So is this a dystopian nightmare in disguise, or is it actually kind of perfect?
Is it the ultimate convenience, or is it the ultimate dependency? That's the central question.
I think I'd take the dependency if it comes with that little blue mesh bag.
And a hot tea egg.
Definitely the tea egg. All right, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
And don't forget your receipt.
Seriously, don't. You might be a millionaire. We'll catch you next time.